Most of us who acknowledge our Indians call ourselves Boricua. And that would include the archipelago.
Just went on.
And they had female chiefs. They had caciques, they call them. And when Columbus came, there was a woman named Ana Gaona who was in power of 50,000, 50,000. You don't see that or hear that in your history books, but if you want to know about it, check out the history books or the history information in Haiti, because that's where they're still teaching their children about her. I just wanted to mention her. But I'm here to speak about the Violence Against Women Act. I'm here to talk about the Violence Against Women Act, which began in 1994. It was brought in, it was a bipartisan act. It came to be after Anita Hill spoke about, she revealed the sexual harassment that she was experiencing from Judge Clarence Thomas. And ironically, it's also been lapsed, it's expired right now during the Me Too movement, during what was happening during the whole Kavanaugh Ford thing. So it's gone round circle. And what the Violence Against Women Act is, because a lot of people don't know, and that's including politicians and community folks who are in power here at the courthouse, folks who are in power at able to help in various organizations, really don't even know what it is. I've spent a lot of time calling them. They're like, what is that? Well, you should know. This is an act. This is a law. Why does it expire every 5 years? It wasn't even there in 2011 for survivors. And I would hope that people would call and call and call and just bother them until they bring it back, because the Violence Against Women Act protects a lot of vulnerable people. There are guidelines for educating courts, and all the judges have already gone through this, but you really can't teach someone something like this in one workshop. We need to bring out how important this is, how important this act is, and acts like these are. Because this act, since 1994, has been focusing on the most vulnerable. If you're not safe in your own home, and you're not even believed about the violence, who can you turn to? You're supposed to be able to turn to your community. Everybody says, why don't they leave? There's nowhere to go. The most you get is 90 days at a shelter. You can't get your life back together. And presently there's a movement where if a survivor has children and she speaks against her abuser during her divorce, we're hearing a lot of disparaging the father. It's being called child abuse. Women are losing their children for reporting domestic violence and child abuse. Something has to be done about that. And the Violence Against Women Act really is very well thought. And it has evolved over time. There is a flyer on the table out front, the first table, that has a lot of fact sheet information. And it describes what is considered abuse. And if anyone else did any of those things to you, they would lock them up. But when it's your spouse, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whoever it is, they call it intimate partner violence. And it's treated differently in the courthouse. It's a civil matter, not a criminal matter most of the time. The Violence Against Women Act thought about these things and said, well, what about jurisdiction on native lands? We have a lot of missing indigenous women, missing and murdered indigenous women. There was a problem with jurisdiction. Non-native, non-reservation police officers and reservation police officers and jurisdictions, and what if it was someone from off the reservation? The Violence Against Women Act addressed that. And it also addressed definitions of partnership. It has some understanding of LGBTQ plus situations in this regarding domestic violence and regarding the act also covers stalking, human trafficking. They could use some more verbiage on that, but they also cover sexual assault. There were various evolutions of it where they talked about disabled women, older women. There was some care given to teen dating. But this act is gone. It's a federal act, and it's gone. So when someone goes to court and says, this person that I love, this person that I trusted, is trying to kill me financially, emotionally, physically, sexually, there is no more recourse. And that is very scary. I mean, it's already scary. And when you are leaving is the most dangerous time, because this is about control. And when you're trying to leave, they don't want you to leave. And the courts in Humboldt County, oh boy, the courts in Humboldt County, they side with the abusers very often. They take custody from mothers for reporting domestic violence, sexual assault within their marriages and within their partnerships. I would like to see domestic violence not treated in a divorce as part of the civil part, because that's property. And we are not property. And our children are not property. It needs to be treated as a crime, because that's what it is. A long-lasting crime that the negative impact it has on our children, our society, is a health issue. And it's time that we look at it and we don't say it's just a family matter. It's just her problem. She made her bed, she can lay in it. Why doesn't she leave? There's no support. That's why she doesn't leave. She loses her children. That's why she doesn't leave. She becomes homeless. That's why she doesn't leave. And what I have experienced in that courthouse is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. You would not believe it, but it's true. And once that judge writes down, this is who you are, and you have no right to be with your child, no one else will say anything about it. No one. That becomes the law. And where do you go when you want to say, this courthouse is corrupt? This courthouse is misogynistic. This courthouse is racist. Who do you have to go to? Back to the courthouse. What is that? How is that justice? How does that give survivors the same rights that all legal persons have? And that is to bring grievance to the court and to benefit from any settlement. What you get is, oh, you're just trying to make the father look bad. You're lying. It couldn't be that bad. This doesn't affect the children. This is about you and him or her or the abuser. It's not true. It's not true. And no one's hearing this voice. I mean, there was no news about how quietly, the Violence Against Women Act was supposed to be reinstated September 30th of last year. And quietly, they just didn't do it. And they said they moved it over to December 21st, the solstice, December 21st. Then it was going to expire then, but then we had the government shutdown And then the government shutdown went on so long, and they said, okay, we'll do it February 15th. And then on February 15th, they didn't do it. They didn't reenact this act. It's not there for us. We have nowhere to go. We have no legal rights. And so on February 15th, they said, well, we'll do it in March. Haven't heard a thing about it. So please, please call whoever you think would listen, and whoever is in a position of power to listen, so that they could reenact this act. You know, it covers a lot of people, and it's a Violence Against Women Act, but that doesn't mean it doesn't help you if you're male. It'll help you if you are a victim of violence, sexual assault, stalking, human trafficking, date raping. We have to fight for this act, and that's all I have to say.
Hey, Danny.
Thank you, Anna, for your bravery and for sharing your story and for being an advocate for such an important movement that needs to be continued, that we've just let slip away. Most of us didn't even know that it had expired. So again, thank you, Anna, for bringing awareness to that. I appreciate you. Next up, we are inviting Mecha. We have our representative, Rainey. She's a member of HSU Mecha, and we'll be sharing how imperialism affects those most marginalized currently in Venezuela. Let's take a moment to...
Right, so first of all, I want to acknowledge that we are on WIAT land, and that everywhere we go on this continent, is indigenous land. I also want to talk about primarily the crisis that's occurring in Venezuela right now and the ways in which the United States continues to make life harder for the most marginalized members of the Venezuelan population, namely women. So at the end of 1958, the Venezuelans liberated themselves from the Perez Jimenez dictatorship, and women had a big part in the Bolivarian Revolution, and especially when it came to instituting a lot of socialist programs that improved access to education, access to healthcare, food security, and protecting women and more marginalized folks from domestic violence. I want to quote real quick the former president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, in a speech that he presented in 2012. The pains of the world are larger for women, and larger for women of the popular classes, the poorer classes. A real revolutionary, a socialist, must be truly feminist, because the liberation of the people is achieved through the liberation of women. So under Chavez, under Chavez's administration, Venezuela created a women's ministry in the national government, which dealt specifically with violent crimes against women, and expanded a variety of free women's health services, maternity leave, and created more democratic avenues for women to express themselves politically. One of the most important gains was the creation of the National Institute for Women, and particularly Article 88, which was, our Constitution enhances the struggle against discrimination of human beings, and because of this, it includes mechanisms for the protection of all social groups. Article 88 is an example to be followed by all countries in their struggle to eradicate discrimination against women. So even as the Venezuelan people, and in particular the Venezuelan women and the LGBTQ community of Venezuela, continued to assert themselves economically and politically, The United States remained forever watching, as it so often does when countries in the global south become socialist or begin to institute more socialist policies. As you may have been noticing in the news recently, Venezuela's president, Maduro, has been threatened very seriously with a coup and has been threatened to be overthrown by essentially a puppet of the United States, Juan Guaido, who has declared himself interim president. Now, this might seem very ridiculous considering that he was not democratically elected. And so so his false presidency not only brings institutional instability to the country of Venezuela, it also further exacerbates the economic sanctions that are already crushing many of the working class people of Venezuela. The other day, I went to the store to get sanitary supplies and toothpaste and deodorant. This is a pretty common thing that most people should be able to do, especially people that menstruate or people who have children who need to buy diapers and potentially formula and baby food and stuff like that. But for a lot of people living in Venezuela and in other places affected by US economic sanctions, these day-to-day necessities can often become very inaccessible. So sanctions greatly affect women and other marginalized communities because they suddenly don't have access to sanitary supplies, things like pads, tampons, other things like that, diapers for their children, and ultimately, the day-to-day life or the day-to-day struggles of survival become all that much harder. The United States has increasingly been threatening Venezuela with actual direct military intervention. And as most people can imagine, creating that kind of environment ultimately creates greater fear for things like sexualized violence and overall violence and discrimination. So ultimately, so if you want to know more about what's going on in Venezuela and how it directly impacts women and other marginalized communities, you can feel free to visit our table. We have plenty of copies of Liberation News, which talks directly about events happening in Venezuela. And then we also have, we're doing a photo project where people can take a piece of paper that says, I oppose Trump's coup in Venezuela because, and then write down like why imperialism is inherently misogynistic and inherently violent. And then basically we take a picture of it and upload it to social media as a part of a solidarity campaign. So I would definitely suggest that the most important thing that I want everyone here to remember today is to always look beyond the capitalist headlines and consider the ways in which acts of US aggression and imperialism have a direct and devastating effect on women and children and marginalized communities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rainey, for expanding our perception beyond the ground we currently stand on and focusing globally, because we are all here in this together and we rise together. I'd like now to take a short break, let you guys sort of marinate in all the information that has been shared. As you can sort of see here, we have some white boards posted up. We're going to be passing out some Post-its. If you have any thoughts, concerns, or anything that you might have learned in the first half of our program, of our conference, feel free to write it up. There'll be pens and Post-its here for you to express yourselves on. But right now,
If you guys want to submit anything
But
to
right
me,
now,
I will
what we're going
post
to
it.
do is take a short break, and I'm going to introduce actually the Raging Grannies, and they're going to dazzle us with their musical stylings. If you're not already familiar with their live work that they've been doing for many, many generations, they are out in the streets promoting peace, justice, social, and economic equality through song and humor, which is what we all need. So please take a moment to welcome the Raging Grannies to the stage.
The Raging Grannies of Humboldt County, everybody. And I'm sure it's going to be a sing-along, so just be prepared for that.
Yeah, well, we're the Humboldt Raging Grannies. We suspect lots of you have heard us already, but you're going to hear us again, yes. And we're starting with a song that we think is pretty relevant to the last speaker. So it's called God Help America.
so much, Raging Grannies. That was so inspiring and such a great, great grand time. Peace instead of war! Awesome. So now we're going to take a short break. If you need to use the restroom, mingle, grab another cup of water or drink, it's going to be about 7-10 minutes of a break. I'll call a 2-minute announcement so that we can corral back because we've got some great speakers coming up for the second half of the conference. Excuse me. I hope you can stay and be inspired. Thank you so much.
Now it's time to put Post-its on the wall. If you guys want me to post anything, just put it in the comments and I will go tack a Post-it up there. And so now I'm just gonna go walk around and give you the idea of what's going on.
Just as a reminder that some of the committee members of Women Creating Community Power are dressed in red and with also a lime green identifying band here. That's the only meaning of the band, is to identify us as committee members and as someone that you can ask questions or look for support from.
I just couldn't believe it. Only one of them was pretty bad. A couple of them tiny. There's tons of food.
It's
Anyway.
the flyer says and the ones that are wearing the green, they're the organizers, yeah.
So a little bit about what I do, and most specifically about the work that we do around supporting women who use drugs and human sex work. They are from research that we have done. They're 60% of the population of folks that we serve. And that is housed all the way to unhoused, full-blown chaotic use to maintenance. And the women that we serve are very much targeted. Women who use drugs tend to be vulnerable, especially when they live on the street, and that's a compounded situation, right? So they need to, if you're in poverty at the level where you're living on the street, you have to use drugs to stay safe. There are multiple women that we have lost over the course of the past few months because they are women who use drugs and they live on the street. And ways that we can support all members of our community better is when women who use drugs, when they say things, you don't disregard them. We lift them up as true and valid. It's very hard to be a woman who uses drugs because many times we get reduced to that being our only identity. But as we know, women have multiple identities, and 90% of people who use drugs are housed, functioning professionals. So when we think about women who use drugs. We need to sort of broaden our perception of what that is and realize that in this space, there is more than just me who uses drugs. And I know that because research shows. And I don't know who you are, but hi, I'm here too. And it's awkward. It's awkward to be in spaces where people may or may not be judging you for something that you do to make it through the day. And so I'll qualify a little of these things I'm saying because it took a lot to get to this space. It took a community of people, and that's what I want to bring, and that's what I strive to do in our daily work, is to create a community that supports women who use drugs and women who enact sex work. Because without that, we die. I am a woman who uses drugs. I am not in chaos. I am on medicated assisted treatment, and I am fully functional. I have built a nationally recognized organization. We have built. That was not just me. Woo. I just got a lot of traction. And in that, we saw that our determination and our work and our drive was continuously trying to be reduced to this crazy lady who uses drugs. I no longer am in chaos. I still am that crazy lady, but I'm on medicated assisted treatment, and those are different, right? Because we medicate for social pains and emotional pains, and so we can either be miserable and usually hide in shame and die, or we can be part of the community. We can be understood, and we can be supported, and we can have doctors who listen to us and who believe what we say and hear us and help us get to a place where we function and we participate and we give back, because that's the whole point. And so when we hear and see reduce women who use drugs to all of the things they do, it's really unfortunate that they're missing all of the things that I'm hoping we in this room see. We see power in all of the people, and there's people at all levels in our community who use different types of drugs who are extremely powerful and caring and building things that are great. And so I don't know what the end of that sentence is, because like I said, this is impromptu, but really making sure that when we make spaces, we pay attention to who's not there and make that space available next time. And that when we think about women who use drugs, we think about that in realistic ways and how we can more support and understand, because the more we lift each other up, the better our whole community gets. It doesn't get better by pointing and saying, look at how sick that woman is. So I think thanks for creating this space and sort of letting me speak about it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brandy, for being the voice of so many. Oh, that was very empowering. Next, we have Redwood Pride. Would like to come up and say a few words. They also have a guest speaker, but we're going to leave the floor open for Redwood Pride, the organization, to say a few words.
Hey guys, my name's Eureka. I've been with Redwood Pride for the last 3 years now. Our table's outside, and you should go and check it out before you leave. We're showing Screaming Queens. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that. It's a really good movie. It's a documentary about the riots at Compton Cafeteria in San Francisco. And we're showing that on March 30th, and it's a fundraiser for Pride. So you should definitely come. Also, this is Humboldt Career Dojo. I direct Humboldt Career Dojo, and we just got done doing our last 2 classes for this weekend. And we're having more next Friday and Saturday, and we invite you guys to come. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Erica. Now, also in association with Redwood Pride, they have a guest speaker named Maxine Dugan. Maxine is a lifelong whore trained in the fine arts of providing erotic services in the underground economies. As a politics and social justice expert for the #CoreNation, Maxine has a background in the wrong end of the law, adult advertising, and media whoredom. She has traveled for work across the U.S. and internationally. Her organizations include the Erotic Service Providers Union, a labor rights approach to sex workers' rights, Erotic Service Providers Legal, Education and Research Projects, which head up the historic Federation Constitutional Challenge to the anti-prostitution law in California, and Community United for Safety and Protection, also known as CUSP, Alaska's current and former sex workers, sex trafficking victims, and allies working towards the safety and protection for all in Alaska's sex trade. Let's warmly welcome Maxine Dugan. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Humboldt. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Congratulations on having, probably your first whore speaker. Hopefully not your last. I'm grateful to be here and privileged to speak on Indigenous land. I have worked as a prostitute for 32 years, and I pretty much plan on working as a prostitute for another 32 more. I founded the Erotic Service Providers. Those are people who earn a living through, different type of erotic labor. You can be a phone sex operator, adult film performer, an exotic dancer, professional dominatrix or professional submissive. You can work in a variety of landscapes. You work the streets. I've worked the streets. I've worked private in-call. I've worked in massage parlors. I've worked alcohol escort and private underground brothels. So I'm so glad to be here today, especially because it's the topic came up earlier about the Violence Against Women Act, and I think it's very important. I'm going to kind of follow on what was said about that, given that that act has been defunded. Because the Trafficking Victim Protection Act was put under the Violence Against Women Act a couple of years ago. The Trafficking Victim Protection Act, as we like to call it, the War on Whores Act, was actually put together under the guise of trying to rescue people who were involved in the sex trade out of the sex trade. Because primarily prostitution is criminalized on a state-by-state basis, except for a couple of counties in Nevada. So most all of us work in the underground. We work in criminalized circumstances. And so because we're criminalized, we're often targets of violence in different forms. And so when they put together this Trafficking Victim Protection Act under the guise of trying to rescue us from our jobs, we were like, wait a minute. Some of us want to be working in our jobs. Sometimes we want to change the conditions that we want to work under, but because it's criminalized, we have to maybe kind of patchwork together situations that aren't ideal, but they're the best we can do. And then we have people involved in the sex trade because of the criminalization of prostitution who maybe shouldn't be there. And so what the Trafficking Victim Protection Act actually does, and actually I really want to tell you something important. While the Violence Against Women Act has been defunded, the Trafficking Victim Protection Act got reauthorized on December 31st, 2018. So while the government was shut down, they authorized $430 million for the War on Whore Act.
Wow.
So while the Violence Against Women Act is going unfunded, they allocated $430 million to be able to fund all of these local trafficking task force that are always made up of police, local government officials. They never have actual prostitutes like myself on them. They never have actual people who have been actual victims of forced labor in our industry on them. They always result in recategorizing and reclassifying all prostitution offenses as sex trafficking and changing all the laws at the state level. So in Alaska, the trafficking laws got brought into place. They replaced the regular prostitution offenses so that now people, not now, but when they did it in 2012, people were arrested for sex trafficking themselves instead of prostitution. So that means here you are being arrested for sex trafficking yourself, you're working with yourself in a hotel room, and the police come and do a prostitution sting operation on you because they got, all these millions of dollars allocated towards the Trafficking Victim Protection Act, where they're having sexual contact with you as a means to arrest you for prostitution. So having sexual contact with us in these prostitution sting operations is legal, and it shouldn't be. It's legal throughout the United States, except for in Hawaii, which made it illegal recently, and Michigan. So here all this Trafficking Victim Protection Act is going towards law enforcement to operate these prostitution sting operations under the guise of rescuing sex trafficking victims. But really what they're doing is they're having sexual contact with us and then arresting us for prostitution and telling us if we don't want to be arrested or we don't want to be prosecuted, then we get to be trafficked into these shame-based, sex-negative, faith-based services. So now we see all these faith-based, sex-negative, shame-based services replacing what had been rape counseling, rape crisis centers, homeless shelters, stuff that's already covered under the Violence Against Women Protection Act. So we think this is a big problem. We're hoping that you think so too. And that you reach out to your legislators and tell them, they're doing the wrong thing. So one of the other things they do under the guise of rescuing us is they target our customers for arrest. Often that results in men of color, men who don't speak English as their first language, being arrested for prostitution in these prostitution sting operations. And we think that's wrong. We object to that. If you had carpenters who were being exploited on their job and you did sting operations to arrest people who were hiring carpenters under the means of stopping their exploitation on their job, you wouldn't stand for that. The carpenters wouldn't stand for that. Well, we're not standing for that either. The other thing that people don't know about our customers is that oftentimes our customers are first responders. They might answer an ad, they might go into a hotel room and find a situation that's questionable. They might find somebody who they think might be underage, or they might need medical attention. And then what are they going to do? Are they going to call for help, or are they going to dial 911 and risk being arrested for prostitution? So oftentimes I've had my customers say to me, I answered an ad, Maxine, and I went to this hotel, and something just didn't look right. So I gave her some money, I gave her a ride, I got her on to her next right thing. And so, we don't want our customers arrested. It's not okay with us. You don't have our permission to affect our economy in that negative way. Some of the other good things that are going on, because I know that sounds so depressing, is that our Senator Scott Wiener has brought forward a law that says you can't be arrested if you're a victim or a witness and you want to report a crime, that you can't be arrested for prostitution. So that's called Senate Bill 233, and I would really appreciate it if everybody could reach out to your California state senators, either individually or as your groups, and write a letter and say, yeah, we support people being able to have immunity and report if they're a victim or a witness to crime of sex trafficking, of rape, robbery, theft, coercion, or extortion without being charged with prostitution. I mean, that sounds reasonable, right? Yeah. So the other thing that SB 233 does is it makes it so that police police can no longer just arrest us for carrying condoms. Condoms are a safety device on our job. We want the right to be able to negotiate for our own labor and our own safe work conditions, and using condoms on our job is part of the way that we do that. So, but unfortunately, once you've been arrested for like prostitution, like if you're a street-based worker, then the police can come along and they can just, they know you. And they're just gonna pull you over. And if you have condoms on you, they're gonna charge you with prostitution again. So we want condoms to be like the safe place, really. And so I'm just really hoping that you guys can just take the time and be able to reach out to your legislators and let them know that you support SB 233, because we support it at the Erotic Service Providers Union. And I wanted to be available to answer any questions if there was just a couple questions, because oftentimes people never get to hear from anybody in our community. You can reach out to me anytime. You can call me. My phone number is 415-265-3302 if you have any questions. You can go to our website. You can Google Erotic Service Providers. You can find our websites, see what we're up to. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maxine, for sharing the powerful work you've been doing. Definitely for a community that is marginalized and silenced and villainized. They deserve rights and representation and safety and supportive spaces as well, despite how we may feel. And honestly, at this moment, I feel like lean into the discomfort, take a risk. We're all in a process, and challenge yourself to contribute, even if it's not perfectly formulated. We're at this grand juncture in time where we're transitioning from what was to what has never been, and that's where all of our solutions lies, and the things that we haven't done yet. And that's going to be uncomfortable. So lean into that. That's powerful. Next up, I'm going to introduce Conversations About Power. Representing Conversation About Power is Bianca Lago. She's the founder. She's also a local artist and activist. And let's take a moment to welcome Bianca Lago.
Hi, thank you, Jen. And thank you for everyone who organized this event today. So I'd like to share a poem that I wrote and then talk a little bit about Conversations About Power and what we are. So thank you for listening. It's a funny thing what happens to a person when they have to become a survivor. Desperate times really do call for desperate measures. I have seen the CEOs, executives, and white collars you speak so highly of. I have seen the pimps, criminals, and blue collars you speak so lowly of. I have seen that there is no difference. I was raped by a pimp and later a lawyer. I was helped by a drug dealer, a prostitute, a construction worker, a videographer. I learned that dirty words were not whore, stripper, slut. I learned that the most terrible words were predator, abuser, rapist. I learned that the human spirit is resilient, that you can heal, that you can thrive. I learned that I am unbreakable, that I can overcome, that our minds are powerful, that our hearts are strong. I am grateful for the love that I never received, for the power that was taken from me, for the suffering of loss and death and addiction and abuse, for those never-ending pits of despair, for the surrendering. And I'm grateful for the strength that it taught me to have, for the understanding and compassion, for the softness and insight and wisdom and truth, for the discovery of my voice. With easy, stomping feet, I will march this earth on a mission to create a dialogue about justice empathy, and equality, to grow and thrive as a healthy community, because in the end, we are all in this together. Thank you. So, conversations about power. It was an idea that I came to after I started a painting on Bill Cosby and Harvey Weinstein. The Me Too movement really gave me the courage to start speaking out about some heavy memories that I had been silently carrying for years. And art was a means for me to communicate that, because it's really difficult to speak about. Conversations About Power, or CAP for short, is an anti-sexual violence art-based nonprofit that was formed to empower survivors of sexual abuse. We're a Dreammaker project for the English People Center for the Arts that uses visual expression and community dialogue to co-construct solutions for the problem of sexual violence. The goals of our workshops and exhibitions are to leave people feeling more unified, informed, understood, and directed. It is our belief that the tactic of providing community opportunities for spoken, written, and visual expression in response to trauma is both an effective and essential form of civic engagement. If you look at the table in the back room over there, it's our collage building workstation. Hello. So today we're going to be focusing on constructing the words consent and power. There's markers and crayons and magazines, so please feel free to use visual and language to share what those words mean to you, and we can have a dialogue about that at the end. We have monthly healing sketchbook workshops where we teach visual techniques for others to be able to process whatever trauma it is that you may be processing. Our next one is going to be next Thursday at Outer Space. It's every third Thursday from 5 to 6. We're going to be taking some of the collages that we've been building down to our next coming exhibits in Santa Cruz, June 1st, and then next July 6th. Then we hope to keep expanding. So thank you all for listening and for giving me this platform.
Thank you so much for sharing a part of yourself and a part of what is, a piece of what is a part of so much of many of our narratives. That we may not find our own voices to share with the community, but know that we are in this together with that experience, or just through the form of sharing. Any problem is a woman's problem. All problems are women's problems. And let's be unified in solution, nonviolent solutions. At this point, that's going to conclude our speakers, but what we would like to do is continue the dialogue surrounding some of the issues that we've discussed today. Again, I want to point out the white posted sheets that we have up here. We're going to pass out some of these Post-its that we have and pens. They're actually underneath this jacket here. If you have any thoughts, anything you've learned, or anything you'd like to see discussed and shared in our community and in the world, we'd love to hear from you. We can't really build this inclusive network without each and every one of you. So please, vocally share your voice written. You are powerful, and we are more powerful together. So again, we're going to break off into small groups to have stimulate some dialogue. If you feel up to that, please participate, but also don't forget to visit the booths, ask questions, learn, get as informed as you can, and also when you leave here today, take direct action. If you are in support of SB 233, please connect with our lawmakers, representatives to push that initiative. We definitely need that here throughout the country and world. Safety is a health issue. And I'm going to open the floor to Sharon here.
Hi, I just wanted to say the little handout that we have with the schedule at the bottom. It has the name of our organization and our email and our Facebook page. We're not creating a mailing list of any kind, so if you want to connect with us and what we're doing in the future, and hopefully we'll have some kind of resource page with all this wonderful information that we're collecting. Go to Facebook and like us, and or email us. So it's on that little piece of paper. If you don't have it
so much.
With this and also answer any of your questions.
Again, this is just a kickoff event to years and years of initiatives and efforts towards creating a more inclusive and equal and supportive space for all those who want to be represented. So please, feedback. We'd love to represent or provide a space for you in the future at additional events that we're going to host. Thank you so much for coming. Yes. And if you are interested in supporting some of the legislation, there's going to be a table towards the back of the hallway that you can put your email address and all resources emailed to you directly. Again, there'll be a pen and paper for you to sign up at the Redwood Pride table if you are interested in supporting those initiatives. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you on the streets.
Post-it, anyone?
He's very happy.
Yeah.
Also, the linguistic art space is available in the back corner of the room. We'd love for you to contribute any piece of yourself to the collage. Again, we'll be traveling throughout the country with conversations about power, representing voices that can't be heard or seen. Also, again, the white post-it notes on the on the glass board here. Share your thoughts, concerns, anything you may have learned. We appreciate all your feedback and participation.